So this week I will be replying to some of the comments you had over the book we just finished, which of course is Self-Inflicted Wounds by Aisha Tyler. So let's jump right in. Got Rilke, clever username, said, overall I liked the book but thought it could have been structured more effectively. She was going for a chronological approach, but perhaps a themed approach around different types of self-inflicted wounds could have worked better, at least for me. Some chapters were too short, others too long, and sometimes a stretch to fulfill the self-inflicted wounds category. It took me too long to realize what SIW meant. That's not a good thing. That's a really interesting comment, and I guess I never thought about organizing it in themes because I just sort of accepted the chronological format of the book. But that is a really good point because I was not a huge fan of the childhood stories, as you guys know, so maybe if they had been sprinkled out throughout the book, I wouldn't have felt so bombarded by them in the beginning. Also, you mentioned some of the things that were a stretch to fulfill the self-inflicted wounds category, and I think there were actually more of those than there should have been, so I agree with you. Shirley G said, this was also my favorite section, talking about the last section we read. A couple of the earlier chapters felt rushed or incomplete, and I found myself looking forward to the longer stories. For me, it wasn't just some of the earlier chapters that seemed a little bit rushed, but it seemed like it was sporadic chapters throughout. And I wrote down that it kind of seemed like to me we would get a few, maybe one or two really developed chapters, and then one that felt really rushed or really out of place, and then it sort of like messed up the flow of the whole book for me. Catherine said, I listened to Aisha read the book on Audible, so I think the endnotes were just incorporated in as slightly tangential asides or else removed completely. And I thought that was really interesting because it never occurred to me how the endnotes would have been incorporated into an audio version of the book. However, like I said before, the endnotes that I did read did not seem super necessary, so I wonder how I would have felt if they had actually been incorporated into all of the chapters. And Liam said, I really enjoyed these chapters. This was a comment pulled from one of the first sets of chapters. I finished the book and I have to say I felt like it went a little downhill afterwards in my opinion. I enjoyed her early childhood stories and I felt I could relate to them a lot more. I almost felt like the later chapters were a little too preachy. We had exact opposite views of the chapters because I did not like the ones at the beginning as much. But I made a note that that might have been because I don't particularly like reading about children because children are not super interesting to me. No offense to people who love children. However, I did make a note that I could totally see how some of the later chapters could be seen as more preachy. However, I felt like the lessons in the later chapters were more justified because I think the childhood chapters were maybe a little bit over-romanticizing the past, sort of. I just kind of don't think that kids are that sagacious, but then again, I may not be giving small kids enough credit here. So that brings us to the end of the user comments. So as usual, thank you to everyone who read the book and who participated. I honestly cannot thank you guys enough. Next week, I will be giving my personal final review of this book. Also, I'm not totally sure we are going to be doing another book on this channel after this one, so stay tuned for next week because I will have more info on that, and I will see you guys Wednesday.